Inside those diamonds, I see freedom flicker. We took some moments earlier to reflect on feelings of freedom, times when we felt free, and holding on to those times as a way to keep our hearts warmed in the cold of this winter season. Anthony Talib Bell is one of our inside members with the Unitarian Universalist Prison Ministry of Illinois. We have 185 members who are locked up in Illinois prisons, both federal and state. And he is one of our inside members who is a poet. He's also a white Muslim, which my coworker Keith Talley, who had previously been locked up and knows Talib well, is very keen to mention that it's very brave to convert to Islam inside as a white man. It breaks several codes that bring more retaliation upon him by the white corrections officers. It's a kind of betrayal of the rules of white supremacy culture. And so Keith was quick to remind all of us that Anthony Talib Bell is someone who his brothers, his black brothers, would surround with care and protection. I'm so grateful for Talib's words this morning. We're in a time where the grip of fascism continues to tighten. And so finding those moments of looseness, of freedom, become all the more important. In the work that I get to do as the director of the Unitarian Universalist Prison Ministry of Illinois, I am given the gift of seeing the larger picture of where we are now and how none of this is happening in a vacuum. And that people have been disappeared and extracted and abducted from their communities for generations through the process of criminalization and propaganda. Now, let me be clear. Are there some people who have done really bad things who are in prison? Yes. Let me also be clear that there are some people who have done some really bad things who are not in prison. And that prisons have done nothing to solve the problem in the United States of reckoning with violence, of how we respond to harm as a society, and finding ways that are much more creative and imaginative than putting people in cages, especially when disproportionately those people are queer, Black, and brown. And if you're intersecting in any of those, then it's even more harmful and difficult, and you're more likely to be locked up. I recently had the experience of attending an action at Broadview Detention Center on the far southwest suburb of Chicago. It's been featured in the national news, but Broadview is a place where the ICE agents who had been running rampant and who are still in Chicago, but who have been all over, have been abducting people and detaining them there at Broadview. And to go there and to bear witness as a person of faith, as many of my colleagues engaged in civil disobedience, prayerfully, mindfully, intentionally crossing into the street as a symbolic act of faith to bring simple supplies like toilet paper, requests for sanitation, for food, for toothpaste, just the basic necessities. These are the same requests that we get from our inside members when we are asked sometimes, could you spare a few dollars to send into my commissary account? Because these basic hygienic supplies are not provided by the Illinois Department of Corrections. Now, Illinois is a blue state, and many people make assumptions about that. We do not have the death penalty, but instead we have something called death by incarceration. In the 90s, there were laws put in place that were tough on crime, And these law and order policies incarcerated people and created mandatory minimums that created long-term sentences. So that, for instance, one of our advisory council members, Lonnie Smith, who is my friend and pen pal, has been incarcerated for 36 years. And he, like so many, has no opportunity for a review of his case to see if there's a way in which he could return, to give back, for he is remorseful for what he did those decades ago and wants to be shown mercy. But the only way to find that mercy is through an expensive resentencing process that may or may not go well, that costs tens of thousands of dollars through the courts, or to ask the governor for clemency. And our governor, and the positioning he is in, and potentially running someday for president, not going to happen. So, beloveds, our mission at the Unitarian Universalist Prison Ministry of Illinois is to equip Unitarian Universalists to transform institutions and to be led by and support people who are harmed by the prison industrial complex. And we do this in many ways, through engaging in events that raise awareness about prisoner solidarity and trainings, but also about engaging and inviting Unitarian Universalists into a ministry of presence and proximity with those who are incarcerated or who are formerly incarcerated. And that, in our pen pal ministry, is powered by the Church of the Larger Fellowship. And I was so delighted to hear that you are offering an opportunity to do just that, to show care by writing holiday cards to your incarcerated folks with the Church of the Larger Fellowship. I can tell you from all the stories I hear from our members inside, what a tremendous difference it makes to be thought of around this time, which for many of us who are in the free world can be a time that is fraught with grief, sadness, unmet expectations. And so imagine when you get a card in the mail, how that feels. And then imagine being walled in cement blocks, barricades, fences, locks, razor wire everywhere, and to receive a card from someone on the outside that says, "I care. Happy holidays. Thinking of you." It's a tremendous gift that allows someone to potentially keep their mind right while being locked up, to hold on to those flickers and those glimpses of freedom. Now, freedom is something that we as Unitarian Universalists have cherished in our heritage for a very long time. Whether it's coming from the free church tradition that comes from our spiritual forebears on the Unitarian side, understanding that we have the freedom to organize ourselves, to create covenants that began all the way back in 1648 with the Cambridge Platform. But with our covenants, we have come to understand that sometimes those covenants continue to be insufficient, just like it was for the Puritans. Feel like they weren't taking in the fullness of where they were. They didn't acknowledge the humanity of the First Nations people who were there. Their covenants were insufficient, right? And so our covenants have to be revised again and again. And that the circle of concern can continue to widen. And here's why. We have the opportunity every Sunday, and in the work we do in our ministries as Unitarian Universalists, we can widen the circle of concern because we tap into an infinite supply of love. Because love is at the center of what we do. And when we don't do that, we come back and circle back around and try again. And that it is not only that we have the freedom that we're free from some kind of tyranny, but it's because we have freedom to choose to engage in this way, in a voluntary way. I'm guessing that many of you didn't come here today with your arms twisted, worried about the flames of hell licking at your heels. Instead, you came for a different reason, an invitation of the Spirit, an invitation of an angel in human form who invited you. Or perhaps it's the connections that continue to weave you together as a network of hands and hearts that's greater than the sum of its parts. Ultimately, when we do this weaving together, when we acknowledge our interconnectedness, it offers a strength in our freedom to do things together that we might not do alone. And friends, I think every preacher, every Sunday is always going to say this. Now is the time. Now more than ever is it time to take action. And yet, we do have the opportunity in every moment to renew our spirits and to think about ways that we can take part in building the world that we dream of. And for me, that is what abolition truly is about. It's not just about tearing down the systems of policing and prisons. It is instead, as the social geographer and activist Ruth Wilson Gilmore says, it is about the building up of institutions that are life-affirming, showing up for those places that allow for the flourishing of all, for the flourishing of life. And I know that this bright spot here is one of those places in Milwaukee that allows for the flourishing of all in a radically beautiful way that not all churches in the area would. Amen? Amen. So when I was at Broadview, I heard people singing, "Tear down the walls, tear down the walls, tear down the walls at Broadview." And we just kept singing it over and over again. And then I imagined all of that energy to tearing down the walls, like it's tearing down the walls of our hearts, allowing our spirits to crack open and access that infinite love in a time when the world around us and those in dominant culture and those in power want to wall us in and lock us up and make us think that we are powerless and that we need to be scared and anxious all the time. I say, tear down the walls, tear down the walls, tear down the walls, to relieve ourselves of the burden that they tried to put on us, and instead to live into who we really are, free. And we may know that freedom only in glimpses, only in those magic moments, but to hang on to those moments, to drink them in. What are those moments for you? And don't let them go. The beauty that we can create together, even amidst any ugliness, understanding that we are flawed, human beings mess up all the time, and yet when we come together in circles and we make covenants, that we have a responsibility, and we realize the responsibility that we have to one another, to hang on together in mind, body, and spirit, and in community, working towards collective liberation. I'm reminded of an article that I read from the ACLU, Wisconsin. And in it, it talks about second chances and that Wisconsin's state prison population has experienced alarming growth in recent years. It's at 130% capacity, with 23,032 people imprisoned in the state as of February of 2025. And now I hear talk that there's going to be no more structures being built. Is this a solution? Is this a solution that allows Wisconsin to reckon with violence? Or are there other answers? Perhaps healthcare, perhaps education, perhaps answering to the ills of economic violence, perhaps answering to the systemic oppression that plagues so many communities. What would it be like to invest in those communities, to lift up the ways that those communities are already organizing and have already been taking care of each other, instead of over-surveilling and criminalizing them? You know, when I come to Unitarian Universalist congregations, a lot of the time it can seem like who is in the we that we talk about as Unitarian Universalists. And I will be in a kinship time or coffee hour, and I will be approached sometimes very quietly and in the corner by someone who has been impacted by the prison industrial complex. Someone who has a loved one who is locked up. Someone who themselves has a record. But there's never a time or a space, except for when I come, to talk about it. None of us are free until all of us are free. We are all impacted by the harms of the prison industrial complex. We are all impacted by violence. And abolition is ultimately an anti-violence movement, one that invites the ideas of transformative justice, where we are invited to understand not only to repair when harms happen between two people or a perpetrator of violence and a family who is affected, but to also begin to look and swim upstream and ask questions of why did the harm happen in the first place? Why is violence occurring? And how can we stop it? By focusing on building up life-affirming institutions. And this church is a life-affirming institution. And we are all bound up together in this world. And now more than ever, we have the opportunity to engage in ways that allow us to work towards collective liberation. My liberation is your liberation, and your liberation is my liberation. Let me hear the people say, let's get free. Let's get free. My liberation is your liberation, and your liberation is my liberation. So let me hear the people say, let's get free. Let's get free. Let's get free. May we continue to journey together, shoulder to shoulder, bolstered by our spiritual ancestors and those who have come before, who have fought too hard for us to ever turn back now. And let us continue to lean on one another in community as we work towards that world we dream of, one of collective liberation. Let's make it so. Yes, amen.